Have you ever loved? Are you loving? Or do you have a feeling that the person you're drawn to might be a narcissist? If the answer is yes, then perhaps you already know that feeling, loving and fearing at the same time, craving yet exhausted, as if your heart were being stretched thin between love and pain. And if the answer is no, then stay a while, because sometimes we don't realize we're stepping into a relationship like that until we've already lost ourselves. In truth, a narcissist never enters your life through darkness. They arrive like a streak of light, radiant, warm, making you believe that you've finally found someone truly special. They say all the words you've longed to hear, touching old wounds no one else ever understood. Yet, that light isn't real. It's a flame warm enough to draw you close, and then slowly burning you away, piece by piece. At first, you think it's love. But the deeper you fall, the smaller you feel, more confused, more lonely, trapped inside a relationship that was meant to make you whole. You begin to apologize for things that weren't your fault, to mend what's broken with silence, and to suppress your real emotions just to keep the peace. And then, when you are utterly drained, you finally realize loving them feels like holding on to a storm. No matter how hard you try, you still get swept away. In the end, when you step out of that storm and find yourself standing in rare, quiet stillness, you see the truth at last. The person who once made you believe in love was only ever in love with themselves. They don't really miss you. They miss the feeling you brought, the admiration, the need, the warmth of being illuminated by a kindness and softness they never possessed. And the cruel irony is that only after losing you do they realize the best thing they ever had in their life was you. So, in today's video, we'll step together into that journey to understand why loving a narcissist can make your heart both burn and break, and, more importantly, how you can finally step out of that cycle not just with scars, but with your own strength and your own light. And to understand why they behave that way, we have to look deeper into the space within them where a complex psychological mechanism operates, one governed entirely by the ego. A narcissist doesn't truly live in the human world. They exist in a world of images and admiration. Every action they take serves one singular purpose: to protect the perfect version of themselves that they've built inside their mind. They need to be seen, praised, and validated as special because deep down, they're terrified of the opposite, of being ordinary, forgotten, and unseen. That's why, when you enter their life with genuine love, kindness, and understanding, they don't really see you. They only see the role you can play in the theater of their existence. To them, you are the supplier of energy, the emotional oxygen tank, the person who keeps their illusion of perfection alive. Real feelings and authentic connection are foreign to them and frightening. In that world, your love isn't a gift, it's an obligation. They believe your care, your sacrifices, your patience are things they're entitled to, a debt you owe simply for the privilege of being with them. When you give too much, they don't feel gratitude, they feel power. When you forgive, they don't see compassion, they see weakness. When you stay silent, they don't hear peace, they hear opportunity. Gradually, they become blind to the very values being offered to them. Like an addict to the spotlight, they crave being seen but never truly notice the one who's watching. And when you grow weary, when the light you've been shining for them starts to fade, they will quickly look for another source, another audience, not because they've stopped loving you, but because they were never capable of loving anyone but themselves. Ironically, their entire life revolves around proving their worth, yet it's their fear of worthlessness that prevents them from recognizing the worth of others. It is the vicious cycle of the ego. The more they crave to be worshipped, the less they are able to love. And in the end, they become prisoners of their own mirror, forever staring at the reflection, never able to touch something real. And then, one day, you leave. No shouting, no dramatic goodbye, just a long, quiet silence, as if your heart has grown too tired to say another word. And it's within that silence that their worst fear begins to unfold. For the very first time, the mirror of their ego starts to crack. At first, they become angry. They cannot comprehend why you would dare to withdraw the love, the attention, the obedience they always considered a given. In their mind, You have no right to leave because you stayed too long, were too kind, too forgiving. They label you with words like ungrateful, disloyal, playing the victim. They want to believe that the problem lies with you, not within themselves. But then, time passes. The attention they once received from you fades away. The caring messages, the warm glances, the gentle, "Are you okay?" no longer come. They think it will be easy to replace you, that with a new person, a new audience, everything will return to how it was. Yet something strange happens. No one gives them the same feeling you once did. The room that used to be lively suddenly feels empty. Your laughter, once the background music of their life, now echoes only in their mind when everything else has gone silent. They start to miss you not because they truly know how to love, but because they can't bear the void you left behind. For the first time, they face themselves without you to act as their mirror. And the reflection they see is no longer as radiant as before. Instead of admiration, they see pretense. Instead of power, they see isolation. The cracks in the mirror of their ego begin to spread because there is no one left to reflect back to them the image they want to believe in. And then, they begin to miss you in a distorted way. They remember how you would listen to them for hours without judgment. They remember the nights you stayed to comfort them even when they were the one who hurt you. They remember your patience, your forgiveness, and the way you looked at them with trust, a light they no longer deserve. But that longing does not come from love, it comes from loss of control. Because when you walked away, they lost the energy source that once sustained their ego. They don't miss you as a person. They miss the version of themselves they felt when you were around, the version that felt powerful, admired, and important. That is their tragedy. They only recognize your worth when they can no longer benefit from it. And by the time they finally do, you have already gone too far, not in distance, but in peace. Yet the cruelest part is this. It's only when you leave that they realize your value, while during all the time you stayed, they used your kindness as a tool for manipulation. In the narcissist world, vulnerability and sensitivity are not things to be understood, they are weaknesses to be exploited. They watch you carefully, like a cold strategist mapping out your defenses. They memorize your every reaction. How you smile when they go silent, how you yield when they get angry, how you forgive when they repeat the same mistakes. And that's when they learn one thing that you will endure. When you respond to their coldness with warmth, they don't think, "This person loves me," but rather, "This person will tolerate me." When you text them to reconcile, they don't see love, they see power. When you cry, they don't feel pain, they feel victory. And from there, the game begins. They test your boundaries, push a little further, and then further still. Each time you forgive, they reinforce their belief that they can do anything, and you will still stay. You think love means endurance, but they think you're safe, someone who will never leave, no matter how much it hurts. In psychology, this is known as trauma bonding, a connection formed through repeated pain. You believe that continuing to love and to forgive is the only way to preserve the relationship. But in reality, you are slowly being conditioned to accept suffering as an inevitable part of love. A narcissist understands this better than anyone. They know you have a big heart, that you're someone who wants to heal, who believes in change. They don't see your kindness as a gift, but as a tool. They don't see your gentleness as beauty, but as a weakness to exploit. And they do piece by piece, turning your very empathy into invisible chains to keep you from leaving. Sometimes, they even make you believe that everything is your fault. They twist stories, distort memories, and make you question yourself, am I really too sensitive? Or maybe I'm the one causing the problem. When in truth, it's them who are pushing you to the edge. It's heartbreaking to realize that the very thing that makes you different, your compassion, your capacity to love and understand, has become the thing they exploit. But you need to know this: empathy is never weakness. It is a form of strength. You just used it to love the wrong person. And by the time you realize that, your pain isn't only about losing them, it's about recognizing how long you've abandoned yourself. When your empathy has become an invisible leash, they move on to the next stage. They stop building a relationship and begin managing you. At first, they are charming, almost as if they've stepped out of a psychology textbook about emotional intelligence. They study you carefully, what you need, what you lack, what you long for. Then, they become the ideal person you've always dreamed of. If you've been hurt before, they turn gentle and protective. If you've been lonely, they become warm and attentive. They don't love you, they study you. Every word, every gesture, every touch is calculated to anchor your emotions and make you believe, this person truly understands me. And then, once you're caught in the web, the mask begins to slip. Affection turns into control. Closeness becomes surveillance. They start to isolate you from the people you love so subtly that you barely notice. They plant seeds of doubt in your mind. Your friends aren't genuine. Your family doesn't understand you. Only I'm truly here for you. And little by little, your world begins to shrink until all that's left at the center is them. At that point, love is no longer a connection. It becomes a form of emotional transaction. You offer loyalty, patience, and endless efforts to keep the peace. In return, they give you crumbs of affection, a compliment, a fleeting embrace, a brief moment of warmth, just enough to make you believe that things can get better. But those are merely doses of emotional sedatives, delivered precisely when you're about to walk away, to keep you orbiting around them. Gradually, you begin to realize that the relationship functions like a system of control. They monitor your emotions the way one might track the heartbeat of a hostage. When you're happy, they extinguish it. When you're sad, they ignore it. When you resist, they blame you. When you fall silent, they punish you with distance. Everything is designed to keep you in a constant state of instability, always trying, always chasing, always believing that if you just hold on a little longer, things will change. And if you stop feeding their ego, if you stop complimenting, stop complying, stop playing the role of the good one in their story, then devaluation and abandonment appear. They make you believe that you're no longer attractive, no longer valuable, that you've changed. But the truth is, the only thing that changed is this. You finally started to see how you were being controlled. That initial beauty was nothing but a carefully crafted trap, a performance staged to make you believe in something that never truly existed. Because for them, love has never been about connection, its power disguised as tenderness. And then, when that power play no longer works, when you start to regain your breath, when you choose silence over reaction, that's when they come back. But not because of love, because they've lost control. After a breakup, narcissists often cannot bear the feeling of no longer having influence over someone. In psychology, this is called narcissistic injury, a wound to the ego. When you stop crying, stop begging, stop seeking explanations, they don't feel relief, they feel loss. Not the loss of you, but the loss of power, the power that once came from your emotional dependence on them. They watch you from a distance, seeing you quiet, calm, maybe even happy. They notice you starting to laugh again, to live again, perhaps even thriving more than before. And that terrifies them, because to them, you weren't just a former partner, you were a mirror that once reflected their grand image. And now, that mirror no longer reflects. So, they return not to love, but to reclaim influence. Apologies appear, tears surface, and you hear phrases like, "I've changed. I can't live without you. You're the only one who truly understands me." All of it sounds heartfelt, as if they've suddenly realized your worth. But beneath that emotional facade lies a single goal: to regain control. They become gentle again, attentive, seemingly sincere. They say the words you once longed to hear, do the things you once wished for. But remember, narcissists don't come back out of love. They come back because they've lost the energy source that fuels their ego. When you step out of their orbit, you shatter the structure they rely on to feel important. It's hard to see clearly, because the moment they return often coincides with your most vulnerable phase, when you've just begun to believe maybe they really have changed. But real change doesn't happen that fast. Change requires accountability, humility, and ownership, things a narcissist can rarely grasp because they threaten the very ego they are desperate to protect. And when you open the door again, the cycle begins once more. The sweetness lasts only until they feel safe that you're back, and then the old patterns return. Silence, control, blame, devaluation. Everything repeats as if there had never been a pause. Because they never came back to love you, they came back to prove that you still belong to them. That isn't love, it's possession wrapped in remorse. And if you're clear-headed enough, you'll see the truth. The person they miss was never truly you, it was the version of themselves that felt adored in your gaze. But there's one thing they never expect: you didn't just leave, you resurrected. When they come back seeking control, you are no longer the person who once trembled between love and fear. You have changed, not with noise, not with revenge, not with the need to prove anything, but simply through peace. And it is that peace, not anger, that frightens them the most. Because when you begin to heal, the illusion that they were the center of your world collapses. What they once used to define you, dependence, weakness, fear, no longer exists. You no longer need them to feel worthy. You no longer need their approval to feel complete. Every step you take, every smile you wear, every small success in this new chapter of your life becomes proof that you never needed them to be whole. And it's in that moment that a painful truth begins to surface. They were never the light in your life, they were the shadow that dimmed it. Your growth, your calm eyes, your laughter, returning all of it, forces them to confront a terrifying realization. That all this time they weren't building you up, they were holding you back. They weren't healing you, they were hurting you. And that shatters the illusion of greatness they built around themselves. But instead of looking inward, they choose denial. They begin to envy, to slander, or to find ways to creep back into your life, not because they want you, but because they can't stand not being at the center anymore. They try to reclaim their old role. The one who supported you, the one who understands you best, the one you still need. But the harder they try, the more your light exposes them. That light, the same one they once basked in, has now become a mirror, revealing their true nature. They see you radiant, independent, renewed, and deep down, they know you always had that potential. It's just that before, you gave all of it to them to heal, to forgive, to love. But now, you've finally given it back to where it always belonged, yourself. And that is what haunts them the most. Not because you've become better, but because they realize you were always capable of this. And now, they no longer get to bask in your light. But when your light moves away, when your world no longer revolves around them, silence begins to echo. There is no one left to mirror them, no one left to listen to the same stories, no one left to soothe their senseless anger. And within that emptiness, something they've avoided their whole life starts to emerge, the void. At first, they try to fill it with noise parties, attention, new people, all thin blankets draped over the cold inside. But the louder it gets, the deeper the silence becomes. Because even if they find 100 new eyes to look into, they will never again find the gaze that truly saw them. They miss you, but not in the normal way. They miss how you listened without judgment, the patience in your words, the feeling of being seen when they stood before you. But pride won't let them admit that. So instead they tell themselves, "I'm just curious," or "I just want closure." And so they reappear carrying vague excuses like "just checking in" or "just wanted to say one last thing." But behind those words lies a deep, unspoken regret. They don't mourn the relationship itself. They mourn the privilege of touching the emotional world you once opened for them. A world where they could feel special, understood, and accepted without having to pretend. A place where, even when they didn't deserve it, they were still loved genuinely, purely. Now, in the silence that follows, they look around and realize no one wants to listen to them anymore. Each new person walks beside them for only a short while, then leaves once they glimpse the wall of emptiness that the narcissist hides behind. They begin to compare, to search for traces of you in others, but no one carries the same energy, that warmth tinged with sadness, that quiet strength hidden within gentleness, that light capable of seeing both the broken and the beautiful parts of another soul. And ironically, only when you are no longer there do they truly see you. But by then, every door has closed. All that remains is a faded reflection of the person they once believed they would never lose. And in the long night of their ego, where no one remains to shine a light, they finally realize it was never you who made them lonely. They created that loneliness themselves, because no one can fill the emptiness of a soul that has never dared to look within. When all the sounds of the past have faded, what's left is the quiet between two souls, the place where one story ends and healing begins. You were never weak for having loved. You were strong for walking away when love was no longer respected. Your silence, your peace, your recovery, these are the final words, gentle yet unshakable, because your worth was never defined by how they saw you, nor by what they said. It was proven by your conscious decision to leave when you chose yourself, instead of clinging to an illusion. They may realize, far too late, that you were the calm within their chaos, the only one who ever saw the human beneath their mask. But that chapter is closed, and you don't need to return to prove anything, because the truth is your light, your self-respect, and your peace have already become the final voice in the story. Now, let your heart rest, not to forget, but to understand. To understand that every pain you endured was leading you somewhere new, to a place where love is no longer about endurance, but about harmony, where you no longer have to prove your worth, only live it. Do not mourn the past, and do not blame yourself for trusting the wrong person, because that very trust, even though it once broke you, is what made you kinder, deeper, and brighter. One day, you will look back and realize every loss had its purpose, and that purpose was to help you find yourself again. So if you are still on your journey of healing today, slow down, take a deep breath, feel the stillness within your soul, and remember you never needed them to be whole. You have been enough all along.